Building an immortal athletic legacy often requires the removal of the human components first. Comfort, childhood, and peace are the first things to go. In 1985, the Santo Antonio parish of Funchal, Madeira, was an environment of limited mobility. Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro was the youngest of 4 children, sharing a single room in a home defined by financial struggle. His mother worked dual roles as a cook and a cleaner, while his father, traumatized by combat in the Portuguese colonial war, struggled with lifelong alcoholism. Football offered a physical sanctuary from the domestic instability of a house grappling with addiction. The hours he spent on those amateur pitches were a calculated response to his surroundings. He was training to outrun the socioeconomic gravity of his environment. At age 12, Sporting CP resolved a historical debt to sign him, forcing a move to the mainland. Relocating to the capital meant abandoning his family for the sporting academy in Alcochete. The transition was psychologically punishing. Subjected to bullying by peers who mocked his Madeiran accent, he spent his first year in Lisbon in a state of cultural isolation and homesickness. This pressure peaked in the classroom. At 14, after throwing a chair at a teacher he felt had disrespected him, Ronaldo was expelled. With his mother's consent, he stopped his formal education to focus entirely on his training. A year later, a diagnosis of tachycardia meant his heart raced uncontrollably even at rest, carrying a severe risk of cardiac arrest. Doctors used a high-precision laser to cauterize the aberrant pathways, restoring a normalized rate. He was discharged hours after the procedure and was back on the training pitch within days. The prospect of losing his career before it began altered his internal drive. He moved forward with a mental ticking clock, linking his survival instinct to a relentless, obsessive work ethic. In August 2003, Sporting hosted Manchester United for a friendly. Ronaldo's performance was so dominant that Sir Alex Ferguson refused to leave the stadium without finalizing a £12 million transfer. At Old Trafford, his style initially drew criticism. He played as a flashy winger, frequently slowing down United's rapid transitions with excessive stepovers and aesthetic tricks. The coaching staff and senior players at Carrington initiated a period of physical socialization. Teammates deliberately refused to award fouls when he collapsed after tackles, forcing him to ride challenges and stop the theatrical antics. Coach René Meulenstein identified a specific plateau. Ronaldo was limiting his own output by trying to score the perfect, aesthetically pleasing goal rather than the efficient one. They utilized a fenced rebound cage for intensive sessions designed to reprogram his biomechanics. The focus shifted to repetition, positioning, and clinical decision-making. He suppressed his identity as an entertainer. By prioritizing efficiency over flair, he successfully engineered himself into a hyper-efficient forward. A world record transfer to Real Madrid in 2009 provided a massive global platform. He arrived with a mandate to deliver trophies at a club obsessed with European dominance. His time in Spain was defined by a direct rivalry with Lionel Messi, a clash that pitted Messi's fluid, natural artistry against Ronaldo's relentless, engineered production. This chart tracks his decade of sustained output in Madrid. Between 2009 and 2018, his goal count consistently outpaced his appearances, resulting in 450 goals in just 438 matches. To sustain this production, he adopted a persona of supreme, unapologetic confidence. It functioned as necessary armor against the impossible expectations of a global audience. This mindset had a side effect. Winning and scoring provided only a temporary release from the immense pressure he applied to himself. Satisfaction remained elusive. At the international level, his robotic club efficiency was replaced by a visible, fierce devotion to the Portuguese national team. This devotion was tested during the Euro 2016 final. An early knee injury forced him to the ground in tears, his meticulously maintained body failing exactly when the stakes were highest. Unable to play, he spent the rest of the match as a frantic touchline commander, hobbling on his injured leg, and physically willing his teammates toward the final whistle. Portugal secured their first major trophy that night. For an athlete often criticized for individual focus, the energy he displayed on the sideline showed how deeply he had tethered his own legacy to his country's success. Securing that trophy validated the decades of work, but it did nothing to slow his relentless momentum. Time is the only opponent a perfectly engineered athlete cannot outwork. When a career is built on absolute physical superiority, biological decline becomes an unavoidable threat. During his second stint at Manchester United, the friction between his ambition and age became visible. He was forced into a secondary role on the bench, which he absolutely refused to accept. The tension broke during a television interview with Piers Morgan. He publicly dismantled the club's management, making his exit from European football inevitable. His refusal to accept a diminished role drew widespread criticism. However, that lack of compromise was the exact trait that had allowed him to build his career in the first place. His move to Saudi Arabia functioned as a defiant refusal to stop fighting his own obsolescence. He chose to continue competing at a high level rather than retiring. Now in his fourth decade of professional play, he has pushed his total past 970 career goals, creating a statistical gap that may never be closed. His drive remains constant on the international stage, with focus shifted toward the 2025 Nations League. The same iron discipline that allowed a 12-year-old to survive alone in Lisbon eventually calcified. What began as a way to escape Madeira became a lifelong obsession. He sacrificed childhood, peace, and eventually his physical limits. He engineered an immortal legacy, but he never stopped paying the price for it.